What is up, everyone? Sean here, and welcome to this movie review. Today's going to be solo with myself, taking it for Terminator Dark Fate, the canonical third film this time around. So, pretty much the purpose of this film is to eliminate all the other ones and kind of clean the slate on those parts, such as Terminator 3 with Catherine Brewster and older John Connor, and there's Salvation with Christian Bale as John, the prime John Connor, and then there's Genesis, and we all know how the majority of people felt about that one. I think it's I mean Genesis. Anyway, those films are gone pretty much from the canon, and now it's its own separate thing, which is like, I don't know, it's kind of makes sense with time travel, right? Like, we don't know how firm and grounded that whole thing is, right? So films love to play that whole thing around, and that's why there's I guess an excuse for it. But so this is supposed to kind of clean the slate, so therefore it's gonna do some things to the lore, and that's why right now it's getting mixed reviews for a lot of people because of the hardcore fans like really being stingy about the lore and what it did and stuff like that. And I can see why. I can understand. I can sympathize with them. And but with that said, I think overall, personally for me, my own personal consensus is that I actually enjoyed the film. They exceeded my expectations, and they were kind of in the middle. Like, first off, I kind of had my initial doubts, and after seeing the first trailer or whatever, and seeing like the initial CGI effects and stuff like that, I was like, eh. But the other trailers had me a little more excited. But I still want to go see it because it's Terminator, and I love the first two films, like a lot of people do. I've seen my fair share of the other films as well. I saw T3, Salvation. I have not seen Genesis because that whole thing. With the trailer and the spoiler and all that stuff. I really can't believe that happened. But anywho, Terminator is one of the most influential films or franchises of all time. I think that's something a lot of people can agree on, right? It was such a game changer, and it's such a memorable movie franchise. Both at least the first one and the second one, right? For their own right. And so that's why I really wanted to go see this one, just to see what happens. Once again, we see Schwarzenegger as, T-800 once again. But yeah, that old aged Terminator, man. But I'll get that later. I'll get to that later. First off, we'll have a non-spoiler section, and then later on, we'll have a spoiler section for where I can really kind of spill the beans on things. But first off, let me take care of the non-spoiler stuff. So I enjoyed it, again, and it exceeded my expectations. I like the action that was presented in the film. I like the dialogue exchanges in between, like the exposition stuff. I love the characters that were thrown in there for this film for the most part. And, it's great to see old faces, and a lot of fan servicey things were present throughout the film. The beginning, man, like, wow, besides the future war stuff, but there was a scene that was such a shocker. And I think that's where a lot of people get divided when it comes to the lore, and that's where the hardcore fans will either really hate it or like it, right? Or maybe love it. I don't know. But it was such a shocker to me anyway. I was like, wow, they actually did that. Like, Jesus. And the CGI in that particular scene was fantastic. It was, such a mind blower for me when I first saw that. And it was executed pretty well when it came to that. But really, otherwise, like one of my major complaints about the film is some of the CGI. Man, it's really obvious, and it hurts to kind of see it. In my opinion, there are a lot of parts with the new villain kind of jumping and leaping around, stuff like that, with CGI, and man, like yeah, that gets a little much, right? But other than that, a lot of the things thrown in there were really cool. Like, of course, the guns, the action, the choreography of things, the flow, the pacing, and all that was really good. Um, and I really liked the new characters that were thrown in there. Like, for example, of course, the Rev 9, which is the new bad guy in this film with the black Terminator like skeleton, and then has like the also the black like nano machine sort of thing going on like around his body. So essentially kind of like it's still like a blend of the T1000 and then the TX, was it, from Terminator 3, I guess, and then throwing in some like more modernized sort of take on like the nanomachines and stuff like that, and regenerating and stuff. Um, that villain was pretty good. Forgive me, I need to look up the name of the actor, but Gabriel Luna. I think he did a pretty good job as the new villain or whatever. And I guess that's where another complaint comes in with people saying like, oh, it should have been a big face or whatever. But as much as I would like to agree on that point, because yeah, it would have been cool to see like, I don't know, an older Robert Patrick or something. I don't know. Could have been a cooler. It could have been someone like Mads Mikkelsen or something. That'd be pretty sick, right? But again, as much as I like to see something like that, I think it's fair to give new faces a chance to kind of rise up to the task. And it is fair to say that Robert Patrick, when he played the T1000 back in T2, he wasn't really that big either. He was relatively under the radar, and he just wasn't really that big. But because of that movie, he got famous. So I think it's good. Like I would feel really happy if I was in his shoes. You know what I mean? It'd be such a privilege, to be part of something big, which is this canonical third film. You know what I mean? And for what he had, he did a good job with it. He gave off some interesting sort of vibes with this new Terminator. Kind of mysterious. Supposed to be like, he's supposed to have like a friendly face, and on the external part of things, but of course hides the killer machine. You know what I mean? And I think he kind of pulled that off pretty well. He had his own thing, you know what I mean? And I think that was pretty good, in my opinion. So, and like the abilities, like the whole stabby weapon sort of thing is back in there too. And yeah, maybe it can get tiresome, but still, like with the action thrown in here, it's pretty cool, you know what I mean? I like the whole like kind of splitting off sort of feature that you kind of saw in the trailer. That seemed pretty neat. That's like the new thing with this Terminator. So the Rev 9, man. I guess. I mean, there were. I guess like the explanation was given, but I felt like it kind of just like flew by, and I felt like they should have like really made it clear on what the Rev 9 was. So I guess that may be a minor complaint, but other than that, yeah. But yeah, so the main villain, pretty good. The next like new character I want to talk about is Grace. Grace is the augmented human, has cybernetic parts in her, as it's obvious from the trailers, right? I think she was cool. Like she really kind of gave off like a nice like badass sort of form, and but also like you can kind of sympathize with her. But for the most part, I liked her character. I like what she did and what she's supposed to be, the guardian of the target, you know what I mean? And Mackenzie, forgive me if I'm, not remember her name, by the way, Mackenzie Davis. Mackenzie Davis did a great job with this Terminator, or not Terminator. It's she's supposed to kind of fill in the shoes of the good Terminator, and I think, yeah, she did her job, even like in the beginning, it kind of felt like, yeah, she was like acting like a Terminator, and then, but because she's human, she has some like relatable traits and stuff like that, I guess. But, um, but for what it was, I think she was really cool. She had her own kind of cool abilities and stuff like that. It's kind of neat to see like a blend of like being human, but also have like Terminator like abilities. So it was a kind of a good, cool thing to see, kind of like unfold, and how they kind of handled that sort of part. So, Grace was cool, I would say, and but I gotta mention, Sarah Connor. Sarah Connor, was fantastic in this film. Maybe a lot of people will say, "Oh, she carried the film," or whatever, but she was fantastic. I love what her role was and stuff, and I think the aging, or her um her appearance, her physical appearance really added her character. You know what I mean? It really gives off that gritty, like veteran sort of vibe. That she's been in this shit for like many years, and she's seen some real deep shit, man. And she has a huge burden on her shoulders, right? For very obvious reasons, and but it's Sarah Connor, man. She is intact for the most part. She was great. Linda Hamilton really still got it, man. She still got it. Like it's just like riding a bike, like she just was so natural with it. And I love Sarah Connor in this film as well. And I really think the physical age like really enhanced her character as well. It was like only supplemental. So yeah, she was great. It was great seeing her. She had some funny parts too. And Danny Ramos, or Danielle Ramos, is the new target for this time around for story reasons, right? And I guess like she's like the least, you know what I mean? Like she kind of not carried her weight as well as the others, the least or whatever, because of how her character kind of progressed. I felt like it was very like by the numbers, like very by the motions sort of thing. Like it just didn't feel natural. Like all of a sudden, like she's becomes this character because that's how the story is written. It's like, hey, oh, I gotta be this character, so bam, you know what I mean? Like that's what it felt like to me. So maybe a lot of people didn't like her or something. So I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong, but beyond that, I think she was still fine. She's not the worst character still, despite those shortcomings. I think Danielle, excuse me, was okay, or Danny, excuse me, played by Natalina Reyes. So, but yeah, man, of course the highlight of this film was Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? He makes his appearance as the aged Terminator. Of course, there's reasons to that. And it was really interesting. Like that was one of those things where it does expand more on the mythos or the lore of Terminator, and I really like that. I really like what they did with it. And when this film was already fine as was, with just those three characters, right? Sarah, Danny, and Grace, right? And of course the Rev 9 and the whole action and everything, right? They were pretty good on their own, but Schwarzenegger as a T-800, that was like the cherry on top, pretty much. And it's not like he didn't like hog the spotlight a whole lot either. Like I think they all like kind of carried their own weight equally for the most part. Danny, kind of wobbled a bit, but she still carried her weight, I guess. But for the most part, the T-800 didn't like. It wasn't like, his turn to be like the main character or whatever, the hero or whatever. Like everyone played their part, and it was pretty cool. Still, it was that whole scene with him, like being introduced and stuff like that was really cool. Um, and the other things about the film I like was the choreography, the action and stuff. It was really cool. The driving, the explosion, and all that. It really added the scene, the adrenaline, and like the weight of the action. So that's awesome. Like I really digged it. I just I really like those parts as well. And the music, man, the music is back. The dun 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 dun, like of course, and even like the T800 like theme, I guess you can say, is back in there. Very simple theme, but very like ominous and kind of scary. It gives off like horror sort of vibes too. Um, and yeah, like, and speaking of which, the fan service was, good. I like what they did to kind of please the fans, with a lot of throwbacks and stuff. There was like a really funny Easter egg involving with a certain song from the beginning of T2 when the T800 walked into the bar and wanted some clothes or whatever, right? That there's a song from there that was played in Dark Fate. But yeah, that was fantastic, man, and there are like a lot of like little teases too, like with the throwbacks and stuff. But really overall, like without spoiling things, like I think overall it was a good film. It was very respectable. It exceeded my personal expectations. Again, like I had my initial doubts about it, but it blew my expectations in that sense. And I love the action. I love the cast. I liked what they did with the mythos. I thought it was interesting. And I think that's it understandably divided some of the fans, I guess. But it is what it is. It's the canonical film that erases a lot of it and kind of starts to kind of hit that refresh button a little bit, right? Because it's like it is such a mess, right? And that's the nature of time traveling and whatever, future warfare sort of thing, and going back in time and that sort of thing. They like play that around a little too much maybe in the past, and they decided to kind of erase that, I guess. But again, for what it is, it's a great action film, especially if you don't really care about the mythos or the lore or the story or whatever. It's still an entertaining as hell film. With all the action and the dialogue, the humor was fantastic too for a film like this, with a number of dark elements. You know what I mean? It kind of like helps balance out the lighthearted nature but like with the dark vibes that this film had. Hence the subtitle. Dark Fate. You know what I mean? And yeah. So with all that said, without spoiling things, I would like to give it a score now. And with that, I'm going to give it a score of a solid 8 out of 10. I highly recommend it for those who haven't seen it already. I think it's a great film. Arnold's in there. He did his part fantastically. And for what they did with the T800, Schwarzenegger still nailed it down. He is the Terminator, man. Like, he is that face of the Terminator. And it's really too bad. He's growing old, so this really feels like the last time with Arnold. But for what he did, it was great. I personally enjoyed it, and I just wish for more. You know what I mean? But again, it is what it is. It's a definitely an entertaining film, great action film. I think the new characters did their job fantastically for what was given to them. So I liked it, and I might be in the minority on this one, at least for right now. Maybe over time it'll grow on them. Maybe it's something you have to watch more than twice. You come to like respect what they did with the lore, but even with that, it's just a good film on its own. I think you should check it out. I watched it with Danny in the Dolby Cinema or whatever, and that only was it kind of added to that effect. So there were some little hiccups with the CGI. There was some little irks with Danny as a character, but other than that, go see it. That's how I feel about it. So, with that, I would like to go into spoilers now and discuss what happened with the film, and I really want to give my opinion about it. So, spoiler time. So, for those who haven't seen it already, go see it. Highly recommend it. Go watch it. All right. So, for those who've seen the film already, stick around. I'm going to go into spoilers. So I am back with the spoilers now. I really want to crack that egg open now and kind of give you guys my 2 cents about it. So, man, all right. The freaking beginning, man. And I'm not talking about the Future War stuff. You know what I mean, with the skulls and everything, and the T-800s and all those Terminators like walking from the water and stuff. Dude, the freaking beginning with John Connor. Oh my god. Like, when I saw that, I was blown away. Like, I was just like, what the hell is going on? Because they were able to de-age with CGI on John Connor and Sarah Connor, who also look fantastic. Like, holy crap, man. It was such a eye-opening experience for me, because this is such a nostalgic thing. Like, this is something I've seen when I was a kid, and I remember, John Connor and Sarah Connor, and of course the freaking T800, like with the sunglasses and everything. Like, wow, like it was such a like fantastic scene, even though it's like relatively simple, not really much happened visually, but it was so much in between the lines. You know what I mean? Like, there was a lot of nostalgia, like the music and everything, and the way, like the way the scene played out. And my God, man, it was such a shocker too, because, well, spoiler alert, freaking John Connor is dead. Like, holy crap, dude. He shot him like point blank. Of course, because it's a Terminator. Like, nothing. Like, boom, boom. You know what I mean? Oh my God, like it all makes sense now as to like what John Connor how he plays in the film. Like, because you never see him in the trailers and nothing. It was such a like eye-opening thing, man, like there was so much happening in my mind, like nostalgia, but yeah, and also like Sarah Connor is like fucked because her son died, and then John Connor is dead. Like, wow. And then, but the CGI effect really sold it. Like, whoa, like seeing these guys back in their prime is such a it was such a treat. And I think, in my opinion, that's like the biggest like nostalgic boner or fan service that they've ever done for this film. On top of like all the other like little Easter eggs and stuff that they've done. And man, that scene alone was like great. It was fantastic. But you can say it's the darkest part of the film. Maybe that's where the dark fate comes from. The fact that someone we knew, we grew up with, is no longer in the mythos now. He's dead. Like, boom, you saw him getting shot and everything. Like, it was pretty graphic. I mean, not like gory or anything, but the way like it happened, like, wow, Sarah Connor's son, man, he dead, man. So yeah, and the T-800 just walked off like it was nothing. It sucks because because John Connor, he felt so attached to the previous one, right? And so like naturally, like he would get thrown off. Like, wait, are you have to be dead, right? You threw yourself in the steel mill, the hot liquid hot steel, whatever, right? And so, that's why he probably was stunned and he couldn't move, you know what I mean? In that in those few seconds. And it probably was like the longest few seconds of his life, you know what I mean, for John's life. And he just didn't do anything because he's just like, wait a minute, are you the Terminator that I know, that I loved, you know what I mean? Or, I looked up to you as like the protector or whatever. But no, it turns out that there were more than just one Terminator sent throughout the world, and they were all programmed to kill John Connor. And Sarah Connor even explained that there was more than one Terminator, and and they had to hunt them down like one by one, or at least run away from them and kill them, along the way. And they were on the run, of course. And of all places, I think it was in Guadalcanal or whatever. They were just having a peaceful time, and freaking John Connor, man. Oh, you think that um he would live through all that, but no, man. He did again, man. I'm still like kind of blown away even now as I record this. I'm still like kind of contemplating, like, man, is he really gone? But he's really gone. You know what I mean? So I'm in that denial, but like I'm trying to like accept what really happened, and I think that's where a lot of people like felt like, it's like, no, but no. John Connor couldn't be killed or whatever, and that's where it divided the people for this film. And again, I can definitely see why, man. Like, wow, it's just like, what can you do? And even later on, like Sarah Connor, like, because of the whole like paranoia that she had with Terminators tracking them down or whatever, like, she never took a picture of herself and her son. And so later on in the film, like, she was, the lowest point during later on in the film. And she, said that she's starting to forget what her son looked like. And I'm just like, wow, that is such a, that hit me right there, man. Man, it was such a like, hard-hitting moment, dude. Like a feels bad sort of moment. Hit you right in the feels and the emotions stuff. But yeah, of course, in between, there was all that cool stuff happening, of course, as I kind of lighten the mood a little bit. Of course, we all know that Grace is the augmented human. She is the good Terminator. She was a regular soldier at some point and from the future, and she, after was injured badly, she volunteered to be augmented. Just, might as well, right? I guess in a time like that. So, that's how she pretty much got her, augmented powers and stuff like that from the cybernetics she was given. And the explanation with the Rev 9 is pretty basic, right? I mean, it kind of plays out like, like your typical Terminator movie, right? Like, oh, people coming from time or time travel, like doing, making their entrance, but there is one thing I do want to point out, and it's so funny because I'm coming from watching Rambo as my last action movie that I saw most recently, which I don't think I really like gave it a review, I don't think, right? Because there's really not much to say, unfortunately. But and that film, like, man, it really had its faults. But it's funny because Rambo and Terminator both take place around Mexico, or at least Mexico was a major part of the film. That whole setting, like, it felt familiar. So in the beginning of Terminator, I was like, guys, am I watching Terminator? You know what I mean? So I, as a joke, right? And I thought it was funny because Mexico, man, it's such a common place for action films. I guess nowadays, at least for these recent years. I could be wrong, but at least with Rambo, Last Blood, and Terminator: Dark Fate, they definitely use Mexico as the laying grounds. So that was funny that they have some coincidences, but Danny is just your regular working girl, and she had her younger brother with her. They just going through the regular life, and of course luck kind of bites him in the butt with robots starting to kind of show up at work, and that kind of plays the real life kind of reference with a lot of technology taking over today, to where jobs are being cut off because of that, and people lose jobs for that reason, right? Because of technology, in some sense. And so that was happening, and then the whole, like, you know, collision happens. You know, after Grace and Rev 9 kind of entered to their destination in time, right? Um, the Of course, Rev 9, you know, he has that Hispanic look to him, so he kind of was able to naturally blend in, and asked for Danny's, you know, where Danny was. Killed her father at first, becomes her father, and then sneaks into the factory where they're working at, which is a car factory or automobile factory. And then, like, Grace, she kind of like does the thing with Kyle Reese, you know, puts on the coat, or puts on the, like, or in this case, a security, like, jacket or whatever, and on her right shoulder or whatever, because she's hiding a shotgun underneath there, kind of like reminiscent of what Kyle Reese did in the beginning of the first Terminator film, or the Terminator. And so that was a nice little throwback. And then the whole collision happens with the film, and that kind of like sets the motion. And the whole, of course, the whole like action scene from the trailer plays in this part too. I love Sarah Connor's entrance with the shotgun and everything. The drum magazine blows up the metal skeleton with a rocket launcher or whatever, and then throws a grenade down below, and she's like, "I'll be back," and then the explosion, and she's like really cool, and she was such a badass in this film. Really liked that whole like entrance or whatever. And then you get to know about Grace's augmented abilities, where you see the weaknesses, the drawbacks. So obviously she needs some sort of like special like mixture of a formula that allows her to metabolize and gets her energy back. That's where she gets her powers, because she has a much higher metabolism. So I guess like food that helps, but not completely, because it doesn't have like the proper like nutrients or the formula and to create that reaction in her to give that power boost or whatever. So I thought was interesting that they introduced her weaknesses like that, and all the in betweens were like really, pretty interesting. And then they go onto the train, of course, and they get to Danny's uncle after running away, of course, and stealing the car from Sarah Connor and everything. That initial little like conflict they had between Grace and Sarah Connor, right? With that, which I thought was funny. And of course, there's that whole thing with the motel scene where Sarah Connor tried to like get questions from or answers from Grace. And Danny was getting along with Sarah Connor pretty quickly. And that's like kind of where I had my problems too. Like she just suddenly turns tough, you know what I mean? And I felt like it kind of was shoehorned in for me when they were in the car, and Sarah like kind of explained what was going on initially, and then she's just like, she was crying, and then of course now all of a sudden like, it clicks, you know what I mean? And then she's starting to help out Grace and stuff like that. I felt like it was like too quick for me, but anyway, I already said that piece in the non-spoiler portion. But it was funny because Sarah Connor, back to this whole point, Sarah Connor kept her phone in a chip bag, and it supposedly was supposed to keep out the signals and stuff like that to make tracking her a lot tougher, right? Because of the aluminum foil around it, supposedly. And yet, she kept getting these texts from a mysterious someone about all these other Terminators that popped out left and right. Kind of like what was happening during with the whole debacle with John Connor and Sarah Connor, and they didn't even know, like they just didn't realize that there were multiple Terminators that were popping left and right because they all came back at once. It wasn't just that one T-800 and that one T-1000. It was multiple Terminators, which does hatch a question as to, like, was it mostly T-800s, or was it also like a split between the T-1000s and then the T-800? You know what I mean? Like, it was kind of strange because they, in the film from T2, we've only seen one T-1000, and of course the T-800 that was sent back was the good guy. But that one was sent by John Connor, like the future John Connor, to protect himself, his younger self, which they had to steal, of course. So I guess, like, I don't know, it's like weird. It does hatch that question as to, like, how many T-1000s were there and how many T-800s were around too. But anyway, that's a minor question. Back to here. I thought it was funny with the whole, like, chip bag and stuff like that, and she's like, "Oh, I love potato chips too." So I guess that she used that as her convenience. Later on, they get to her. They get to Danny's uncle's house, right? And they're trying to get help to cross the border. Initially, she was trying to explain the story of, like, oh, she's being chased by robots and stuff like that, and naturally they would be like, "Wait, what the hell?" But then another humorous scene came up with Grace while she was eating. She had her butterfly knife. She was, like, swinging around, and then she, like, cuts this fly that was bothering her, and like with such precision, in half. And that's where, like, the people, the uncle, and I guess, like, his son or whatever, were just like, "Okay, we believe you." And then it transitions to them kind of trying to cross the border. Fortunately, they get captured, and of course the Rev 9 still tries to harass them or mess with them by controlling the drone after doing his thing, like stabby on a lot of the military personnel, unfortunately, which is pretty graphic, by the way. And so they get to the detention center. And obviously they were held there. Sarah Connor was on the run. She had a bounty on her head because of the whole running away from the asylum, and with John Connor. And naturally, they have guns, so they might have been looked at as, like, criminal, like super criminals or something like that. Very dangerous in the United States. Entirely. In fact, all the other states saw her as a threat. So he even pointed out too, like, in 50 states, or 51 states or whatever, she's or I'm a danger or whatever, like, or I'm a threat. So yeah, she's famous, or infamous, I should say. And then she was arrested. They were able to extract her from the detention center, and they're on their way to get Connor out of there. And so of course the Rev 9 kind of makes his move, closes in on the target, but Grace, she was still fucked up from the scene, or she once again saved Danny from a crashing drone that Rev 9 caused, because he kind of steered the drone into the group. But anyway, they survived that debacle, but Grace was running low on fuel. So I guess she still had, like, 2 syringes left with the formula, and she was able to get to it because they didn't pat her down somehow when she was arrested, and she was in the medical room or medical bay. So after all that, she was able to revive herself, and then she broke free, and then she broke all the other prisoners and stuff like that out, and caused a prison riot, rescuing Danny in the process, and Rev 9 chasing them down. And after that, of course, Sarah Connor did her thing. She came out, escaped, and was able to escape with, the rest of the crew. And before they got to the place, Grace had coordinates etched onto her body in case, hey, if you're in trouble, if you're if shit is hitting the fan, go to these coordinates, and you'll get some help. And of course, by coincidence, Sarah was getting texts and these messages from this mysterious person from the same coordinates. After finding out, thanks to Grace doing her future shit, as she quotes future shit with Sarah's phone, and that's how they were able to kind of connect that. So, this person helping Sarah is also the same person kind of being able to help Grace if she was in trouble. So, they go to the place after stealing a helicopter, of course, and then they come to find out that this person helping them, or helping Sarah, was the T-800. And I guess, plot twist, right? It was the same exact T-800 that was sent back from Skynet to kill John Connor. And after he successfully killed John Connor, he fulfilled his purpose. So I guess he just kind of wandered around looking for a purpose. And for some reason, he was, and because of what John Connor did with Sarah Connor, they obviously, destroyed Skynet, and they were successful at that. And therefore, Skynet was actually gone. So where does all this happen, or where does all this come from, you ask? Well, there is the Legion. That's the new Skynet. And I think that's another thing where people got divided, right? Like, I prefer Skynet, blah, 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 because nostalgic reasons. But I personally found it, natural, because things will get outdated. There's technology gets overrun by other technology. Things will be better than others. That's the nature of updating. That's what happened with MySpace. It just got overrun by Facebook. Eventually, it got swept under, man. And that's what kind of happened with Skynet, man. Thanks to John Connor and Sarah, they did it. They actually did it. They were successful. But the war was still going to happen, because humans are always going to have the desire of being powerful in a war state-like manner. So they want to, create digital, cyber intelligence or artificial intelligence to just be on top of things, right? But in turn, that also gets self-aware, and that's the new program, Legion. So that's how the war happens again, because, humans, they're just never stopping this whole desire of becoming the most powerful, or just being, especially with each country, of course, they want to, be on top when it comes to that. And Legion. That's something you hear from Star Wars or something, right? A little lame on the name, but it's a minor complaint. Anyways, back to here. So the T-800, turns out that he was helping out Sarah. Why? Well, he started to kind of learn about, compassion and love and family and stuff like that, because the T-800 just wandered around and happened to run into this family that had an abusive father. And I guess for some reason he was able to kind of, find it himself to help out the family and somehow get rid of the father, right? They didn't say how, I think, but he got rid of the father and became the new kind of foster father. And also, of course, every time he sent Sarah Connor these texts before then, he always ended with "for John." So that was kind of like a very initial like clue, that obviously this is a person that knows Sarah Connor. Yeah, and of course it turns out to be the last T-800, and it killed John Connor. So it was such a like whoa, sort of interesting sort of plot twist and kind of like an interesting story arc for both the T-800 and Sarah. And that's where she got to her lowest point, because the person helping her was the one who killed her son. And of course, that's where the line of, oh, I'm forgetting my son's face, And man, yeah. But as dark as that part was, dude, the T-800, man, he was pretty funny. Like, holy crap! Like, what is going on with this Terminator? So I guess, because of what John and Sarah did, he was freed. He found a new purpose. He was freed from Skynet. There was no one else to tell him what to do. So therefore, he just was able to do what it wanted to do. And I guess he wanted to learn what humans were going through, which is all these like emotions and love and family and whatever, the concept of family. So I guess it grew a simulated consciousness. And that's why he felt, I guess, maybe bad about what he did to Sarah Connor and, of course, her son. So I guess he just tried to like redeem himself by helping her out with any other Terminators that pop out to, I guess kill Danny or whatever. And it's just so weird because like, he decided to give himself the name Carl, and the wife came home and when she came home, she's like, "Hi, honey," or whatever. It's really funny, It's so like unnatural because it's the T-800, and it's Arnold too. Like, so it's funny to hear him talk, right? Still, but this is the T-800. He's supposed to be like the killer machine, but there he is being a family man, and it's really funny when he's like offering pretty much like Corona with the lime inside to the crew. And of course, oh yeah, first off, yeah, they're in Texas, so yeah, that's another thing. And like everything in the entire scene was great. I love what they did with the T-800. It's such an interesting like take on the T-800. Now he's becoming more human, and starts to have more than just like these few emotions or few characteristics that robots would have. It's almost like a blessing in disguise in a way, because he was able to make this family happy, but in turn, John had to be killed. You know what I mean? So it's like someone's end is like a new beginning sort of thing. It's just kind of weird, right? But still kind of like a blessing in disguise sort of thing. And so, it's really funny because, Terminator was like, or the T-800 was like, I can change diapers with efficiency. I listen, and I'm actually funny or whatever. It was really like everything about him trying to be human was like really funny because he was like wearing like normal clothes. He even wore shorts too. Like it was like on top of that funny Sunday, man. And of course they explain what happened, of course, and the what is it? The war could still happen, so the Terminator still had these guns in his shed, and, and like he's like, oh, I keep these guns because because of the probability of humanity, the entirety of humanity kind of falling and going to war or whatever is still pretty high, right? And so he kept all these guns, but also he said, this is Texas. It's like, I love the humor around the Terminator. It was really funny. But yeah, anyway, so after he explained what happened, you know what I mean? Or I guess he was caught up to what happened. You know, he knew that he had to help him out. And so, like, it turned out that the family that he was with for, I guess, a long time still didn't know who he was. Exactly. So, um, it's kind of interesting. Like, it maybe like on the inside, like the family knew like that he wasn't exactly human, but they just didn't care because, you know, they loved him. And speaking of love, he can't feel love, but I guess he understands it in certain aspects, but he still can't like feel it or whatever, despite the simulated consciousness that he grew. But he still like um gave what he everything that he was able to do for the family. He even said like, oh, our relationship is not physical or whatever. So, um, yeah, so he only just helped him out, and he did what he could to be a father figure, and even like the son, he loved him too. He loved the son. He pretty much did love the son. He cared for the son, definitely. And when they had to split apart because he's like, well, I have to do something and I'm not gonna come back. They hugged it out, and that's where, you know, that was the end of that family. I guess that's where they split off and we never seen them again. And so the T-800 goes with them, um, and he helps them out. Of course, there's all these little funny bits with Sarah kind of trying to command the Terminator because she just really hates his guts for what he did to her son. But over time, she just was able to forgive him because, he had these feelings or whatever, or he was able to understand his feelings, and also just, that he just helped him out and stuff like that. So she just couldn't hate him beyond that. So I guess she came to just at least respect him, and there's a whole battle happening and stuff, and the battle with the Rev 9 and the Terminator was pretty cool, or the T-800, excuse me. Along with Grace and stuff, and Grace and Terminator fighting together was pretty cool too. And then and they had the plan of like creating a kill box and using EMP, but the EMP was destroyed essentially because Rev 9 was shooting at it, in blind fire, and then they go to some factory or whatever, and they made that their kill box or whatever, and then stand their ground. They fight, and then after a treacherous battle, they prevailed, but not without the death of Grace and of course the T-800. And then right before the T-800 went out, he said, "For John." And I was like, oof, man, the feels, bro. The feels. Because, he's gone. And essentially, like, in a sense that it's unlikely we're never going to see Arnold again. Unless they do some CGI stuff, that's possible, but it's not going to be the same. And that's, like, kind of like how he signs off and stuff. But yeah. That's pretty much all I got to say. I don't want to go on a little too long because my throat is starting to go out, and of course I'm hungry. But you kind of get the picture for those who watched it already. Like, it was cool, the whole thing with Schwarzenegger was awesome. And I love what they did with the lore, honestly, because we've seen all the stages of John Connor. We see him as a kid, of course. We see him inside Sarah, as a baby, it's still in the womb, and then young John Connor, and then older John Connor where he's a bum, and then we see prime John Connor with Christian Bale, and then we saw John Connor as the bad guy, spoilers I guess, for Genesis, So now we've seen John Connor being dead. You know what I mean? So he went through all, like, pretty much like all the big main stages, I guess, as a character. So I guess it was interesting in that sense. But it's still like sad to see that happen, man. Um, I'm trying to like think of anything else, but yeah, of course, the ending, the very end. Um, you know, Danny goes to see the younger Grace because, of course, the whole future thing. And oh yeah, I mean, of course, before I sign off with that, turns out that Danny is the new John Connor, and she, like she's actually the new John Connor, like not just like being a target for the sake of things, but well, I mean, I guess she's supposedly on the surface the new Sarah Connor, but then, because even Sarah Connor thought that too. She was like, oh, why, because Grace asked her why you're helping her, and Sarah said, well, she's like me, and so that's why she wanted to help her. But turns out that she's John Connor instead, the new John Connor, and she becomes the new leader of the new human resistance against Legion, and that's how it goes. And she was the one who saved the young Grace from the future, and she helped train her and become the soldier that she was, and inspired her essentially, and along with a lot of people. Same with what John Connor did in the future. So yeah. Anyway, so back to Danny, going seeing the younger Grace, without, of course, unbeknownst to her, she was just going through school. She was getting out and meeting her parents. And Danny was happy to see that the present Grace was living a peaceful life, and Danny was now becoming a battle hardened person that the future Danny becomes. And Sarah is like her mentor. She's still alive, and I honestly thought she was gonna die, but I guess not. And she's gonna become her mentor, or pretty much her I guess her right hand, you know what I mean? And her guide, essentially, advisor. And Sarah was just like, be ready for anything else or whatever. And they go off, and that leaves off the open ending in this, essentially opening the possibility of more movies off of this canon now. You know what I mean? Off the main line when it comes to the canon. So that's it. I think that's all the spoilers and stuff. All the major ones anyway. But I just love the whole thing with Terminator, T-800. He was great. I love the whole humor that was behind that. Offering the whole the Coronas and him wearing shorts and everything else, man. It was great. I love the training session with Danny, with the pistol and all that stuff. The watermelons and everything, the guns. It was great. Schwarzenegger again. He was the cherry on top. It's still an absolute 8 out of 10. I loved it, and so yeah. So that's pretty much it for my spoiler section of things and overall the review. So if you guys who watched the movie have any comments about Terminator, what do you guys think? Leave me down in the comment section. We'd love to read them. And so I guess essentially that is pretty much it for Terminator again. But the next review I don't know, it's just going to be weird because there's a lot of movies that myself and Danny would like to see. So I don't know if we're going to do a review for any of them together anyway. But I don't know if I'm going to do a lot of those reviews because there's going to be a lot of reviews essentially. But I may handpick them. One of them will for sure be Ford versus Ferrari because I think that's a really cool looking movie with Christian Bale and Matt Damon and cars. So that's definitely one of them. But another one will be Jojo Rabbit and I'm forgetting the other one. Oh, Mr. Rogers. Yeah, that could be another one too, possibly. But hopefully, I don't know. We'll get around to that. We'll get there. We'll get to that bridge eventually. So, anyways, thank you guys so much. This has been my review and spoiler portions or spoiler talk of Terminator Dark Fate. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. So, until next time, I'll see you then. Sean out.